Some Zorin OS download data suggests that Windows might be losing its stranglehold. Is this true, wishful thinking, or what? We'll talk about this and the trends and things like that on today's video. Welcome back to Switch to Linux. If you like this type of content, feel free to subscribe to the channel if you've not already done so. Leave us a like and a comment down below. And today I do want to talk a little bit about this question of, is Zorin just released a blog post saying they had, just in the recent release of the Zorin 18, 1 million downloads, with over 70% of those coming from Windows. Is this a giant exodus of people leaving the Windows platform? That is an interesting question, and today I want to talk a little bit about this, and is Zorin a good choice for somebody switching to Linux from Windows if you are frustrated, and can we even trust all of the data we see? These are all good questions, and I want to start out, of course, just remind you, we did a video last week talking about Linux going Linux first on a Dell computer. Of course, what Dell basically said is, hey, there are a lot of enterprise people that are like, yeah, we don't want all this cloud first focus, and we have some serious concerns with the privacy implications. So one of the latest super high-end Dell NPU computers is certified for Linux before Windows for the first time. And that raises some concerns. Is this really a push towards Linux in a lot of areas? And then this, of course, has been going around the various news cycles that the Zorin upgrade. Now, I think Zorin was in the perfect place for this. This isn't just out of the blue, spontaneous. See, Zorin, right when Windows 10 was going out of service, a whole lot of people were getting frustrated with the Windows 11 push. Right in this time, Zorin releases a brand new version, Zorin 18, and it just kind of caused this trifecta where a lot of people may have had their first experience with Linux trying it out with Zorin. And I think we're still seeing a ton of data on the internet about try Ubuntu. And I've actually been sending texts back and forth to a friend of mine who works in computer stuff, mostly with AI contracts and stuff, I think for government stuff. But he does, I think, most of his work not on Linux. So he'll send me questions like, you know, Ubuntu, I did an apt install of Firefox on Ubuntu. Why'd I get the snap? Like, we talked about this a long time ago, dude, you know. And the point is that he's kind of a Linux newbie as far as running it on your desktop. And he's like, yeah, I might actually drop Ubuntu and go to Fedora instead. Well, I think that there's a lot better choices. While Fedora is making a lot of forward pushes, Fedora and Ubuntu both have a big problem with being far more corporate of a distribution. Not horrible choices. I'd definitely rather somebody on one of those two distros than switching, you know, staying on Windows. But if you're talking about what is the best way for a novice to Linux to switch to Linux, I actually think your best option is going to be something like a Zorin. I still deeply recommend Linux Mint, but I will say Zorin has a lot going for it. I have a whole video about Zorin, so you can search my channel for the Zorin video on, actually, it was either right before 18 released officially or it was right after 18 released officially. It might have been on the beta. But Zorin has just a quick bullet point summary of the things it has going for it. Number one, it is easy to install. Number two, you can choose a Mac-like layout or a Windows-like layout, and you can customize the layout to other forms. If you pay for the Zorin Pro, you have a lot more desktop options as well. They have really good light mode, dark mode options, and one of the better things they have is they actually have an alternative search built directly in. That's something Linux Mint and any other distro doesn't have. So if you try and install a Windows executable file, you've downloaded your Office program or whatever else, you try and run it, it has a catalog of the most common Windows software people use and says, hey, you can either install the Windows compatibility layer and see if we can get this to work, or you might consider this free alternative instead. And so Zorin does have that going for it, and it does have a very nice overlay going for basically a front end for, I think they're using bottles as their front end. Effectively, it adds wine and some Windows compatibility that you can install some Windows applications on it. I'm not personally a huge fan of running wine under most cases on a day-to-day production machine, because the side effect is it could potentially allow Windows viruses to run as well if you're not configuring it properly. And that is definitely something to consider. But all that being said, they released this blog post. Now, the first thing is about this is they are working on the in-place upgrade. So if you have Zorin 17 and you want to go up to 18, the testing version of this is out. Just a warning, as of the time of this writing, this is not for a production machine. This is for people to test on their test environments. But eventually we will have that direct upgrade path to go from 17 to 18. But what they say here is 1 million downloads in just over a month of Zorin OS 18, breaking all previous records. And so they say 78% of these downloads come from Windows. Now, they didn't tell us what the previous download percentage is. I would certainly wager a lot of these downloads are people downloading it to test it. I mean, I downloaded a copy to test it, and we played around with it, and it was really good. And I do give it a good marks, and I like Zorin. I think Zorin is an excellent Linux distribution for people to run. It's not my favorite, but it is an excellent choice for you to run on your first PC and Linux PC, and a lot of people will agree with me with that. Now, what we did see, though, is a lot of people coming out with this news and going, oh, look, all this massive amount of people switching to Linux. How encouraging. Is it really the case, though? That it's harder to make an argument for that. And I'm going to tell you why here. One of the main reasons here is looking at the statistics for the market share. Now, there is one point of problem here is that I put the chart out to November, and of course the month of November is not completely over yet, so the data may not be the best. So if you pull that just to the last complete month, which is October, wow, look at all that. Windows dropped from 70% to 66%. Wow. And then it went right back up to 69. A little bit of a drop from 70.8 to 69.62. So that does mean that certainly more people might be switching over to Linux or some other option here. So on this one here, we have our OS X. That one actually went down a little bit, and our unknown went up a little bit. What causes that unknown? We'll get to that in a brief moment here. We have our Mac OS. This is the older versions, still running at 4%, and our Linux is at 3%. Now, that's 2.95 up to 3%. And but that's down from 3.34%. But you'll notice it seems like there might be less people on desktop computing overall. It's hard to reconcile these small fluctuations and changes. But I do want to propose another reason for this bump. Let's suppose people are switching to Windows. One thing I'm seeing is I am seeing a big push towards privacy. I am seeing people looking for alternative browsers as AI is being forced upon people. And there are a lot of people that, while they may be generally okay with AI, they don't want AI hoisted upon them. And so what this means is people might be looking at different browsers. And one of the things browsers can do is spoof your Windows fingerprint, your computer fingerprint, showing you being on Windows. Now, I am using Firefox over here, and this is generally the default browser that I use for showing news articles on this particular computer. And you can see here that we're running Linux and we're running Firefox, and you can see a bunch of other fingerprinting stuff. But there is another thing to consider. You see, if I switch over my desktop view where I am running LibreWolf on the exact same computer, you can see that it is reporting that we are running the Windows operating system running Firefox, because LibreWolf has really good fingerprinting tools that even masks your user agent. And this is not the only browser that does this. Now, I don't have Brave installed on this computer, so I didn't test Brave. As of 5 years ago, it didn't spoof what you're on, but there are a lot of computers that are making it easier to install Linux distros or whatever else, making it easier to install your alternative browsers on, and that definitely is something worth keeping in mind. And what I want to mention about that, though, is Brave might spoof the operating system. I don't know if it does. LibreWolf does. Malvad browser does. Those are two of the browsers that are recommended by a lot of people looking at wanting to stay private. So if some people are switching to Linux, but they're so focused on privacy, they're looking up privacy browsers and installing things like LibreWolf or Malvad, they are actually going to spoof those user agents. I do not know at this time if Brave, and I didn't think to test it on the other computer before I turned the monitors around, but if Brave happens to also spoof this, Zorin comes with Brave as the default browser. And so it is possible a bunch of people could have switched to Zorin and the stats don't keep up with it because it doesn't look like they changed their operating system at all to the average browser pre-installed on the system. And that is another thing to keep in mind. So when we are considering these statistics, first we have to recognize that these stat counter statistics may not be accurate, particularly showing us the operating system as more people are installing privacy-focused browsers such as LibreWolf in this case. And the fact of the matter is that people switching to Linux are generally more private. And so what's to say that as we look at those stats, we see this big unknown operating system jumping up? Who's to say that's not some of that Linux? It's just doing a really good job of fingerprinting itself. And the stat counter throws up its arms and goes, I don't know what's going on over here. It's just a computer, you know? And that really is an interesting question to think about. So it is deeply encouraging to see that Zorin has seen so many downloads. And even though these Windows numbers don't look like they are falling, don't let that discourage you on the Windows user base, because some of these privacy browsers do spoof the user agent and makes it look like your computer might still be running on Windows, which is a really good thing if the internet thinks your computer is still running on Windows, even when you're using Linux, because it's like, yep, did my privacy job. That's good to know. Good news and good to go. So I wanted to leave those thoughts with you. Zorin is a really good distribution. If you are looking to try out Linux, that is a good one. Of course, I always recommend Linux Mint as well. Linux Mint is also good because it has a good download guide. So you can even scan the QR code on your phone and you can follow those steps to get the system installed. Zorin, though, just as easy to install. They both have a lot of good things going for them. And I would just encourage you, even without wiping out your entire Windows operating system, I would deeply encourage you to at least test out Linux somewhere to see what it can do for you. Let me know your thoughts about all that in the comments down below.